Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? An interesting podcast today. You have some moves going on when it comes to the Eagles. No offensive coordinator was actually hired, and that's very interesting, but it is the new trend, and it is a copycat league after all. So the Eagles do make some news when it comes to finding ways to get an offensive coordinator, and I say that with air quotes because technically there is not one. And also the Sixers, because the Sixers conversation will not go away. It doesn't deserve to go away. And we will have plenty of phone calls to take from all of you. And if you did not know, you can actually call into the show. There is a 24/7 anytime hotline that you can call at 856-442-9805. It's also a text line, so you can text in as well with your point, leave your name and where you're from, and I will read it on the air if so. This is an opportunity for you to get your voice out there and to get out your point, your thoughts, and how you feel about the topics that we will be discussing. So there's plenty of Eagles conversation to go around. There's plenty of Sixers talk as well. Before we dive into all of it, though, we need to hear a word from my sponsor, SeatGeek. Are you looking to go to a game, an NBA game, an NHL game, a college basketball game, or even a concert? If you use the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page, you will receive $20 off of your total purchase. It's a no-brainer to use the promo code BROADS today. All right, so let's start with the Birds. And originally, I wasn't really happy about it. And to be fair, I'm still not thrilled, but I don't hate it either. We all know that Doug Pederson is the play caller. He is the guy when it comes to creating this offense. It's his offense. 98% of what happens is because of Doug Pederson and what he dials up and what he comes up with in his brain of his. So I understand that. But I still think there is value in the OC, and here's where I'm kind of confused with my own emotions. If they were to hire Press Taylor as OC, and that was his title, I would probably be very disappointed in that hire. Well, they essentially did that. He is the passing game coordinator, while you have Stoutland as the running game coordinator. So he's co-offensive coordinator technically. So technically, he is promoted to a portion of the OC. So shouldn't I be very disappointed in that if I was going to be anyway, if he fully was the real title? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know how I feel about this. The Eagles and people around the NFL try and sell it like, listen, there's a bunch of different opportunities to hear a bunch of different views because you have these two guys talking to Doug Pederson, and they also hired some other people as well, Rich Scagarello, and that's the hottest name of the two hires. It's him and Andrew Briner. So Rich Scagarello had a bunch of experience around the NFL. He was most recently with the Denver Broncos as the OC. He ended up getting canned, but he had to deal with a lot of different situations when it comes to quarterbacks and all of that nature. I think he has a good football mind. He has a good football background, and I'm interested to see how he will help this football team. He was part of Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, so maybe some creativity will be involved. He doesn't have an actual title yet, and neither does Andrew Briner. They are just going to have roles. That's what we know right now. They're going to have roles, and that is from Tim McManus of ESPN. But I think it's weird because the Eagles went around and interviewed all these people and nothing really happened. Now, there's a couple things I can question when it comes to that. Did they sell these individuals? You're not really going to be the offensive coordinator. You're just going to have a role, and that's why it wasn't working out, and that's why they didn't want to come here. Or is there a conversation to be had about the type of people the Eagles have running the show with Howie Roseman, with Jeffrey Lurie, with Doug Pederson? Is it a tough group and a tough crew to work with? That's something I mentioned earlier about 2 weeks ago when it came to not getting an offensive coordinator actually hired. I'm not pissed off or disgusted. It just feels odd. I don't like the conversation about, well, listen, no one wants to take it because they're not calling plays. That's crap because it's still the next step when it comes to getting hired as a head coach. I know Andy Reid tried selling us that Doug Pederson called plays. He didn't call plays when he was the OC in Kansas City. Absolutely not. Andy Reid called the plays. Let's be real. I know that there's clips around with Bieniemy calling plays right now too. I think there's spurts and moments when Andy Reid does allow people to call plays because that's part of Andy Reid's tree and that's how he helps them grow. He gives them opportunities to do it. But Andy Reid is the reason why the offense clicks. And of course, Patrick Mahomes. But you get my point. Frank Reich. I know Josh McDaniels backed out of the Indianapolis Colts, but he was the OC here in Philadelphia. Did not call plays. And now look at him. So I don't like that conversation. I don't think that's fair. But let's take our first call, and this is from Sean, and he's not happy when it comes to this situation.
Hey, it's Sean from St. Petersburg. Again, to reiterate, the place where old people come to die. Quick take on the Eagles coaching situation. On the surface, I don't like it. You know, I think there are times, and I know Adam Kaplan, name dropping, has said this, but I think they try to outthink themselves. I mean, what was really accomplished here? You know, now you've got like 25 different coaches doing 25 different things with 25 different titles. It's kind of along that old rule of NHL goalies. If you have 3, do you really have any? That's kind of what I'm thinking here. To me, this is a letdown, and it leads to further confusion. If the offense sucks next year, who do we yell at? Do we spin an imaginary wheel? Oh, yell at Scangarello this week. Hey, Press Taylor, you're up. You know, I just don't get it. And again, I think it's a letdown for the fans, but we'll have to see how it.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned who do we yell at. The answer is Doug Pederson because he is the guy that runs the ship at this point. Not that he wasn't last year or whatnot, but now it really is all in on Doug Pederson. We know he is the full guy that is really doing it all. He has help, and I guess that's silly to say because when I look at it from afar, it was all his anyway. But there's no scapegoat now. Essentially, is what it is. There's no scapegoat when it comes to this offense. If it's ugly, it's all on Doug Pederson. If it's pretty, the praise goes to Doug Pederson. But it's interesting because this team mentioned, and the upper management mentioned, that they were going to make big-time changes. And is this a big-time change, getting rid of Mike Rowe and your wide receiver coach, Carson Walsh? Is this big enough? To me, it's not, and that's why I'm a little bit underwhelmed, but I'm also not crying about it. Let's go to our next call. Also, not happy about what went down.
Here's the thing. I can't be the only one who feels like every time Doug Pederson or someone in the Eagles organization does something well, they do something stupid. I can't see us going well. I was a big DiFilippo guy. I thought we should have brought him back a few years ago. And then we lost Frank Reich. Frank Reich never gets any credit for the 2017 team. That was a huge loss. I don't know. I don't love Doug Pederson with this amount of power. Something about it seems like it's going to go horribly wrong next season.
Well, to be fair, Doug Pederson has always had this much power. He is the offensive guy. He is the play caller. He is the head coach. So he always had that type of power. In terms of DiFilippo, I know that was a hot conversation once he left here and things didn't look as pretty. He hasn't had that much success in other places. Frank Reich, absolutely. And I think this fan base does appreciate what Frank Reich brought to the table and how he helped Doug Pederson really get that offense going on a hot stretch. I think Frank Reich gets a ton of credit. But when you look around DiFilippo's career since he's left here, you could be a DiFilippo guy because it was good when he was here, but it's not as if he's running around and being extremely successful around the NFL. Let's go to the next caller.
All right, well, Here goes the 2020 Eagles season down the gutter again. We decide to not sign offensive coordinator because, Howie likes to wait too long, and we are stuck in the gutter with Doug Pederson. So now, what doesn't make sense about this move is how many boneheaded calls did Doug Pederson make while he was on the job? A lot, okay? So why in the world do they think this is a good idea? Now, the Press Taylor move I kind of like, not going to lie. I think it's not too bad. But what are we thinking?
Wow. An anti-Doug Pederson call? It's funny because I'm the complete opposite. I'm not complete opposite. I do question Doug Pederson to an extent, but I'm not anti-Doug to that extreme by any means. But with the Press Taylor move, I don't know if I love it. Although I was reading the Athletic piece between all the beats on the Athletic when it comes to the Eagles, and they seem to be really high on Press Taylor and what he has brought to the table. Remember, he was with Chip Kelly when he was here, and he's still within the organization, and he's only in his 30s, so maybe that's that mind that they like, that young guru mind that they're trying to get. I don't know. They're high on him, though, and I'm not down on him. I just don't know if he is the best option right now. Let's go to another caller questioning Doug Pederson. What is going on?
What's going on, bros? This is how I feel about this situation. Doug called plays in 2017 with Frank right there, but he trusted Frank and leaned on him while calling the plays. I wanted something like that for him again with a guy like Jim Caldwell. It could have benefited Caldwell. It could have benefited Caldwell's interest with his age not to call plays and just implement some of his stuff with Doug. At the end of the day, 2020 is all on Doug. I love Dougie P, but this could be bad if it blows up. Or he could get praised if it works. There are other play callers that do this, so let's see, I guess.
All right. Wow. Yeah, he almost literally said what I said a little bit earlier. It's like if he does very well, he's going to get a ton of praise here. But if he does awful, he's going to get ripped apart. Now, it's interesting you bring up Jim Caldwell. I like that name. I do. He's experienced. He's been around the league. He's at a different point in his career, too. So maybe he would appreciate that offensive coordinator role. I just wanted fresh minds and a new input. And I know they do have a couple guys coming in that will change some things potentially. But I don't know if it's enough of a shakeup for me. That's all. But once again, 98% of this is Doug Pederson. So when I dissect these moves, it's really about 2% of the difference. While that's an important 2%, Doug makes the calls. He's the final guy here. And it's crazy to hear the different takes on Doug Pederson, and I'm surprised, I guess. I'm surprised that there's some anti-Doug going around. Now, there's times I think he's clueless and he makes some really questionable decisions. And I think there's times where he blows my mind. And it's not I think there are times. I know that there are times. But I'm not anti-Doug Pederson. I think he brings a lot to the table. He has that one attribute that is very important that you can't teach, and that's keeping the guys all together. He has that motivation factor. You can learn X's and O's, and you can learn schemes, and I've always said this. He's not the smartest X's and O's guys in my X's and O's type of guy, in my opinion, but he has that stuff that you can't teach, that you can't learn. So that's really important to have those tangibles. You can learn the other side of things, or you can have people help you with the other side of things. But there are plenty of times where Doug Pederson blows my mind, and I don't know what he's thinking. Remember that play this season with the fake field goal where he had the punter trying to throw the football? What are you doing, Doug? Oh, how was that? How was that coming into my mind right now? I don't know, but I want it out of it. That's for damn sure. I want it out of it. It's going to be a wild off-season for this team. There are so many things that are going to have to change. You're going to need pretty much an entirely new secondary. We don't know what's going on with Malcolm Jenkins yet. The draft is going to be something else. There's also an article up on NBC Sports Philadelphia. I believe Ruben Frank wrote it, and it's about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and how history is not on his side. His poor performance his rookie year, and when you look at other people who have played throughout the NFL who had similar seasons like that, it doesn't look like it gets much better. It doesn't. And that's scary because we need help at that position so bad. Oh, it's going to be awful for him. I really do think it's going to be awful. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the moment I saw his mom holding the umbrella over his head at training camp. To me, that's sad. To me, that's pathetic. I can't handle that. It's disturbing. Moral of the story here as we close out the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't like the question, well, what would the OC do anyway? The OC has been a thing forever. There's been plenty of coaches that call the plays where they still have an OC throughout the history of the NFL. That's where the copycat league stuff comes in. Well, the 49ers did it. Where other teams around the league are starting to do it. Now it's just a copycat league. All right, screw it. You don't need an OC. You can get input from other people. You're going to have Press Taylor focusing on the passing game. You're going to have Stoutland focusing on the running game. Then you still have Deuce, who is the assistant coach, and he's the running backs coach as well. And poor Deuce, it seems like the guy's just stuck. But my big thing was I wanted an outsider come in here with a new voice, with some experience, and the name Caldwell was the one that stood out to me the most. I know the Eagles were talking to guys in college at USC, trying to go for some young ones, and I didn't like that. To me, though, it almost feels as if this was their last option. And maybe they're trying to save face. Like, oh, well, let's just go with this approach because we can sell it to the fan base that this is what we wanted to do the whole time. While they were going out and trying to talk to people, trying to go to the Chiefs, maybe looking into the 49ers a bit, going the college route, as I stated. I don't know. Something just smells funky, as if they're trying to save face. But we'll see how it all plays out. I'm not going to crush it to an insane degree. It just doesn't move the needle much for me. Ultimately, it comes down to one guy, and that guy is Douglas Pederson. All right, so let's move on to the 76ers because my voicemail box was flooded with Sixers conversation, and deservingly so. People just want to keep getting it off their chest. They want to keep talking about how brutal it is and how painful it is, and I totally understand, so I will accept it, and I also want to do that as well. Every day I wake up, and the first thing on my mind is realistically the Philadelphia 76ers and how embarrassing it has been so far this season. Can't get it out of my head. The trade deadline is going on as I am recording this podcast. The one big trade besides the Houston one, because that happened last night, where Robert Covington gets traded, it was the Iguodala trade, and I think Iggy is washed the hell up. He's going to Miami, and I don't like the way at all that Andre Iguodala played this. I don't like the way he played this entire situation with Memphis. He's a professional. He's a respected pro. What is that? That's garbage, in my opinion. But I'll have an entire podcast based off of the trade deadline as a whole. I don't want to get too heavily into it right now. Of course, I expect the Sixers to make a move, but to me, the only move I see them making is something where it's a bench piece. You're going to see them go out and just get a bench guy. That's how I see it. A guy who plays 16 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night, and that's the type of move you're going to make because everybody has more assets than the Sixers do, and that's just reality. Let's take a phone call from Matt talking about Al Horford and the accountability because there's this quote getting thrown around because at the media session, Al Horford mentioned the talking in the locker room and how there was a conversation internally and it got blown out of proportion. The media headlines are running with it. So let's take a listen to Matt.
What's going on, bro? This is Matt calling. I just got that notification about Al Horford saying that there's problems in the locker room, there's stuff going on. No shit, there's stuff going on in that locker room. There's clearly no leadership in that locker room. Brett Brown has completely lost this team. Players don't seem to respect him. There's no accountability in that locker room. It shows on the court. It's clear today how unmotivated they are and how they aren't playing together as a team and how they're not fitting together well as a team. I love Brett Brown, and I never wanted to fire him, but I don't know. I mean, something has to change. We are way too talented to be performing like this.
I agree completely. Something does need to change. There is a lack of respect going on right now when it comes to this squad. And when you look at Al Horford's comments, to me, it doesn't mean much. The way the media ran with it, I understand why they did it, because that's their job and it was an important quote. And when you get a quote like that, there's no doubt that's going to be a headline. But he was just saying the team talked in the locker room and he's going to keep it internally. Wouldn't you expect a team like the Sixers to have that conversation right now when you are underachieving, when you're in the 6th seed, when you're getting blown out by 31 points, 20 points, when you're getting embarrassed on a nightly basis? Yeah, that's obvious. They're clearly going to have that talk within the boys in the room. So he's just obviously stating that they had a talk as a team, but they're just going to keep it inside and keep it with the fellas. That's all he was claiming. And I thought that was obvious that was going on anyway. Once again, I get why journalists would take that quote and really make it a story, but there's no reason to overblow this thing. Oh, look at what's going on. Like, well, obviously, they're going to discuss this. It would be nuts if they didn't discuss this. All right, next up, we have Ben calling from Australia. What do you got for me, Ben?
Hey, Birds. I'm calling from Swansea, Wales, to talk about what has been thus far a pretty poor season for the Sixers, bearing in mind the expectancy we had before going into this. But what strikes me in every loss that we have, and it's consistently featured throughout, is the mentality or the lack thereof in this side. There's no defensive intensity or indeed offensive intensity. We seem to run out of ideas quickly. No one in that group and that team wants to motivate or galvanize these players, and that's the same with the coaches, and they've got to take the blame too. But on offense, we don't seem to run any plays or sets that benefit our best players, i.e. Embiid or Simmons, or give wide open looks to our other players, wide open so shots that they can put down easily enough. Instead, we are static, we don't move, and it's so easy to defend. Then on the defensive side, well, we just turn up whenever we feel like it, and more often than not, we don't turn up at all. We just let them score, let them go on runs, and we don't do anything about it. And again, that's sort of down to the leadership aspect of this team. We're on the eve of the trade deadline now, and I can't see us getting anything because no one will want our players. We have Mike Scott's contract, no one would want that. Zaire, who would really take a risk on him? Horford, I can't see us trading, nor Harris. So we're stuck with what we've got, and I can't see it getting any better unless we perform a miracle in the buyout market.
You're not wrong. Thank you so much for the call, by the way. I appreciate all the support from Australia. That's pretty damn cool when you think about it. A couple points you made. You're right. We don't have many assets to trade, and that's a problem right now when it comes to this team and making something happen and making a splash. There really isn't much there, and the type of players we can get, it's not going to change the outcome of this season. But you mentioned how Brett Brown isn't really dialing up plays, and he's not working with these players to get them in the best spots. Can't argue with it. I can't argue with it. And it's something that has to change. Now, we're so deep into the season, there's no way in hell they're going to can Brett Brown. It just doesn't seem realistic. I'm basing it off of what I know about the 76ers. It doesn't seem like they would make that type of move. Now, I want to tie what you stated into the line by Joel Embiid, talking about spacing. And you mentioned Brett Brown not utilizing the players properly. Joel Embiid was talking to the media claiming how, he's out by the three at times. And then there's problems with spacing when he's down low. He's pissed off. He's annoyed with the way everything's being played out. Now, I look at that quote and I think to myself, is that an Al Horford problem or is that a Ben Simmons problem? Because Al Horford is shooting too many threes. He is out by the perimeter. He is spacing the floor because he is the guy shooting too many threes. So is that a problem with Ben Simmons? I don't know who he's targeting. Maybe it's everybody. Maybe it's the offense as a whole. I don't know. But when I'm trying to logically break that down, to me, it's Ben Simmons more than it would be Al Horford, because we're all complaining that Al Horford's jacking up 9 threes a game. Well, that's too many. There's games I look at the stat sheet afterwards. He's 3 of 9, 2 of 9, 2 of 8, 1 of 8, 0 of 7. So he is running to the arc, behind the arc. He's called out Ben Simmons a few times, if you remember. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. Are they bashing heads right now? Next up, another Matt wants to talk about Brett Brown. Interesting.
Hey, Broads. Matt down here in South Carolina, man. Love the podcast.
Thank you.
Brett Brown, gotta go. Simple as that. What player has gotten better under Brett Brown? None of them. That's what a coach is supposed to do. There's no modulation to his game plan whatsoever. It's the same thing. How many times are we going to do the dribble handoff? Doesn't work. Can't beat the zone. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Everyone who says Ben Simmons needs to shoot, I don't really think he does, because do we really need another guy on our team that just can't shoot the ball? And we have lots of them already. I wish Al Horford and Neto and a few other players would adopt the Ben Simmons of quit shooting the ball. I mean, that might make the team a little bit better right there. Brick Central.
I get your mindset. I see what you're saying. Well, you want Ben to shoot, but is he even going to make the shots? I get it. But you still need him to. You still need him to start shooting the ball, because at some point, maybe not instantly, but at some point, if he starts draining 10-foot jump shots, I'm not talking about 30-footers, 10-foot jump shots, at some point, teams are going to have to defend you differently. It won't happen right off the bat. They're going to make you shoot it. Similar to what we did with Giannis on Christmas Day. He takes the threes, but we allowed him to take it because we were daring him to. That would happen for Ben Simmons. But at some point, they're going to consistently make them enough where it's a different story. It's a different story. And teams will look at him differently, and it needs to happen. I know he can be dominant without it, but it doesn't mean he can't do this. It doesn't mean he can get away with this for the rest of his career. At some point, it needs to be established. It needs to be addressed. And realistically, it was 2 seasons ago. And here we are, going with the same conversation once again. Next up, we get a call from Connecticut talking about, in my opinion, maybe some unrealistic trades.
Hey, what's up, bros? It's James Studley from Connecticut, the ultimate bandwagon state. With a lot of Celtics fans around. And the Sixers around here, they've been the laughing stock of the league. I feel like we could trade Tobias Harris and Al Horford to get some pieces, maybe like Derrick Rose or CJ McCollum. I really think that a lot of three-point shooting will help enhance the team and just make them so much better. Everybody's calling them soft and everything, and it hurts me because I really thought that we were going to be better going into the season. I thought we would be a 60-win team, and we've just been a freaking joke.
Yes, we have been a freaking joke. The trades, though, you're not going to trade a Ben Simmons for a Derrick Rose, an Al Horford for a Derrick Rose, or a CJ McCollum. That's just not going to happen. There would be no reason. That type of trade, a Ben Simmons for a Derrick Rose, that's just a emotional, frustrated thing to say. Like, that doesn't even make a little bit of sense. No matter how pissed off you can be at Ben Simmons, that is not even close to being something that would ever happen, because that would be a stupid trade. You're never going to get in return what you're sending out when it comes to Ben Simmons, unless it's a Damian Lillard, a Devin Booker, and those types of players. But when people say that, there's two sides to every trade. I hate to use this comparison so many times, but this is not NBA 2K, where you can just throw things together and hit the A button or move down the slider so the GM mode's a little bit easier and they accept all trades. Why would the Suns give up Devin Booker for Ben Simmons? Why would Portland give up Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons? I'm not doing it for CJ McCollum. I'm just absolutely not Ben for him. Why would the Sixers give up Ben Simmons for Derrick Rose? It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. So that's what I think on those trades that were just mentioned. The last call we are going to take is a question that is very interesting about the players or Brett Brown. Who's to blame?
Yo, what's up, bros? I love the podcast. I love your YouTube channel. I just wanted to call in here and say I'm just frustrated as a fan. Something needs to change desperately. I can't keep watching this stuff, and my opinion, I think it's Brett Brown. But I just want to know your opinion. You think it's the players or you think it's Brett Brown? I think it's Brett Brown in my opinion, but yeah, man.
I do think Brett Brown is playing a factor, but I always blame the players first. I blame the players for not competing because they were just not competing. Like, they weren't trying. They weren't hustling. That's on them. To let 81 points up in the second half, to allow 137 points, whose fault is that? It's on them for not going out there and working hard on the court. But with that being said, at some point, a message runs dry, and I think that is what's happening with Brett Brown. When a new coach comes in and they're there for 2, 3, 4 years, all right, the players are listening, they're engaged. When it gets to round 6, 7, all right, we've seen this before. We know what he's going to say after the game. Or remember when he does this, and the message doesn't connect the same way with the players. It doesn't relay the same way, and I think that's the problem right now. So I blame both. It's hard for me to not blame the players. Like, there are people out there who just automatically assume Brett Brown is the only issue. Hell no. I mean, Joel Embiid has been garbage this season. He hasn't lived up to the hype. He hasn't been as good as we were promised he would be. He came out saying, oh, that hurt me. Game 7 hurt me. What? What has he done this year? He's done squat, in my opinion. Squat. The players aren't playing. But the coach's message is running dry. It's both right now, and there needs to be a major change-up. And considering they're not going to move any of their pieces right now because some might be unmovable and because they don't have many assets, the only way to really spark things up is a coaching change. I just don't think it's going to happen this late. It's almost like a lost season, if you will, sadly. And I hate to say it, but that's how I feel. All right, well, they play the Bucks. They play the Bucks next, and that's going to be a very fascinating matchup. One team who's playing hot basketball, that's on a tear, and no, that team is not the 76ers. And then you have the Sixers, who look like trash. Trash that's burning on fire. Something's got to give. Oh, by the way, they caught up Marial Shayok. That'll be fun. He's been tearing up the G League. Maybe he can spark this team a little bit. He can score. He needs a scorer. Maybe he's your trade deadline acquisition. We will see. So thank you so much, everyone, for the phone calls. This not all-time hotline. This anytime hotline is working out tremendously. Once again, the phone number is 856-442-9805. You can call in at any time. It's 24/7. You can also text in, and I will read text messages as well. But it's been a really awesome addition, and I love taking the phone calls and interacting with you. So do not be afraid to call in at any time to express your feelings. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I will see you next time.